everyone, welcome back to my vlog. I'm Robin, or Hobby Treating List, and this is our final push to actually reach my reading goal. I had decided I was going to read 115 books this year, and I made this decision before the two most reading intensive semesters of my return to college. So I got pretty behind, but after reading 9 books last week, we're getting closer. I just have to read 6 books by Thursday. That's not a just sentence, but I have a plan. Unsurprisingly, my plan is to read the easiest books to read. So I read a book last night. I finished it. So now I have 5 books left. I'm going to outline my plan. I have, I think, 2 editions of Lore Olympus that I haven't read yet. Those roughly take me anywhere from like an hour to maybe 3, maybe. I also have a story by, I believe it's WEB Du Bois, that is 13 pages. So I will, and it's a physical book, so it counts. So I'll be reading that as well. And then I do want to start reading Game Changer. I have read Heated Rivalry before the series came out, but I hadn't read any of the other books, and now I'm curious, and I'm jumping even more on the bandwagon than I already was. So I may try to start that tonight, but the main focus is going to be probably Lore Olympus and the Comet. Because, as I mentioned, I did read a book yesterday, and it was actually a book for my TBR, which is great. I read Wrong Number, Right Bear, and it is about this world where there are humans. It is Omega-verse generally. There are humans who are alphas or omegas or betas, I believe, although I don't think betas are mentioned. But there are also shifters who also fall in that hierarchy. Wrong Number, Right Bear is about this guy. Oh crap, what's his name? Is it Troy? Trey? Theo. Only thing in common with the 2 names I threw out was the T. That's great. He finds a box of kittens by the dumpster, and he wants to take care of them, so he tries to call a rescue, but he ends up dialing the wrong number, and so he gets a hold of Carlton, who is not a rescue, but he has experience with cats and helping a friend of his who runs a rescue. And so he helps Theo anyway, and when they meet, Carlton instantly knows that this is his mate. Carlton is a bear shifter, and he is able to smell their connection right away. Theo feels a connection, but he doesn't know why. But from there, pretty instantly, they are together and navigating a human shifter romance, as well as the fact that Carlton is a bit of a workaholic who has been alone for a long time, so he doesn't quite know how to balance work with being in a relationship. There is also MPreg in this book, and I think for the most part it could have been done better, I will say, just because it felt like an afterthought instead of like part of their relationship. So I had some issues with like how the relationship was presented, because like while insta love is not my favorite thing, I can understand it more in Omega-verse reality, just because it makes more sense for fated mates. So it doesn't necessarily bother me, but what does bother me is, like, okay, fine, your mates or your soulmates or what have you, you still have to get to know one another. Like, it's not just like, okay, happily ever after. Like, no, you still have to get to know one another. And I felt like that wasn't necessarily happening, and when it did happen, it felt really awkward. So I didn't necessarily believe the romance, which sucked. The kittens were cute. The kittens stayed present throughout the entire book, which I appreciated because I would have been really miffed if they just disappeared after they served their purpose. They were very cute. I am confused about the passage of time, however. I don't know how much time passed because the kittens didn't seem to grow. And like, I feel like there should have been more of a, like, the kittens should not be able to fit in the palm of your hand for like months at a time. Like, kittens grow pretty exponentially and then they kind of stop. So yeah, it just, I don't know, it just kind of bothered me a little bit. And I don't know if it's just like because I've been trying to read shorter books for like a week now. I don't know, I'm getting like inundated with just like romance, like insta love stories, and so I'm being a little more critical. That is very possible, but it just, I don't know, it doesn't quite hit the way that I wanted to, because I felt the premise was super cute, but just the execution was not quite there for me. There's nothing necessarily wrong with it, so I gave it 3 stars because like it was fine, but I think for a Fated Mates Omega-verse story, like, it has to do more to get 5 stars. So, yeah, that's it. That's all I read yesterday. I was just kind of chilling, trying to get caught up on, like, being home again. But, yeah, I would say that's about it. So I'm gonna try to do stuff, wrap my head around returning to work, which I start work again this afternoon, and it's so hard after like 8 days off. And I'm gonna try to read, I would like to read 3 books today, but that feels like a lot, even if they're graphic novels and like a very short story, but we will see. I have read 3 more very short books. So I have to read, 4 more very short books. So I have to read 1 more book and I will meet my reading goal. So let me go in order. Okay. I read Olympus Volume 4 yesterday, which was good because it is also on my December TBR. But it is, Olympus is a somewhat modern retelling of Hades and Persephone. Essentially, it is like Mount Olympus and the gods area are more modern. They have phone, they have electricity, they have all this different technology. Whereas the mortal realm is still ancient Greece. So this is a retelling of Hades and Persephone, but it also weaves in different Greek myths, which is really cool. So Volume 4, there's a lot of focus on Ares and his previous encounters with Persephone, as well as Ares's relationship with Zeus and Aphrodite. Like, he's sort of sprinkled throughout the whole thing. There's also a big focus on Persephone's dealing with her trauma, which I'm not going to say what the trauma is because I feel like it's a little bit of a spoiler, but dealing with that, as well as her feelings for Hades. And so I love this series. I'm not caught up to like the webcomic, but I have read it before, and I've definitely read Volume 4 before, but it's good to read it in like physical form. So I gave it 4.5 stars because I just think it's really well done. There are some parts where like maybe the layout makes it a little confusing, and that's why I took away the half star. But otherwise, it's really good, really solid series. So there's that. I'm kind of blowing through these a little bit because I don't want this to be like a super long video, but I then read The Comet by WEB Du Bois. And I don't remember when the comet was written, but around the turn of 1900-ish, give or take a decade. But it is about this new comet who is going past the Earth, and sort of the Earth gets caught up in its tail, and that means that the Earth is exposed to like all these gases and stuff like that are very noxious. And we are following Jim, who is a black man and is in a, you know, a messenger position, I believe. And of course he's looked down on by the white people that he's working for, and so they send him to this like cellar area to find something, and he gets like locked in this room. And as he's trying to like get out is when the comet comes by, so he actually escapes, only to see that everyone is dead because of these gases that he was not exposed to. He ends up finding another person who had also been locked in sort of a room, a dark room, developing photos. And so she also survived, and she is a white person. And they travel together to try to find her father, to see if he survived. And it looks at the white woman's thought process of now being sort of forced proximity to this black man that she would not typically look at otherwise. And then the ending happens. So, I mean, I'm not gonna talk about the ending. It's a very short story. It's like, my copy is like 17 pages. But I do think it was very well done. I do think it was, if this situation had happened around the turn of 1900, like, I could see it going that way. So I gave it 5 stars. I'm glad that I read it, and I would like to reread it at some point in the future where I'm able to really like do some research into attitudes of that time and stuff like that, and just get a deeper appreciation for it. So there's that. So that's what I read yesterday. As for what I read today so far, okay, I also read I Could Pee on This, which is a poetry collection from the perspective of cats. It was so cute and accurate and funny. It's like 100 pages, but realistically, because of the pictures and stuff, I would say it's like 55-ish pages. But I felt like the poems were, if cats could write poems, it would be these. Like, I think it was very well done. It was very funny. It made me like laugh out loud a couple times. I was also reading it with my cat in my lap, which just made me appreciate it a little bit more. So I ended up giving it 5 stars because honestly, I don't think there was anything wrong with it. I think it was perfect. I think it was exactly as it should be. And then I also just finished reading Everything You Need to Know About Sexual Identity. So this was a book that my dad had gotten me a couple years ago. The library near him was having a sale, and he saw it, and he got it for me because I like reading about sexual identity. And so even though it's a book where I'm like, all right, I'm not really learning much, that's okay. I will say it was published in 2000, and that certainly shows. There's a lot of information that was just not known at that time. And so, but I'm not counting that against it. What I am counting against it is sort of like, it mentions like people being transgender, and it sort of very briefly explains what that is. But then it's like, but we're not going to talk about that. We're focusing on sexual identity. And it's like, okay, I understand why, but you could have focused on, because the whole thing was about like validating and normalizing, like there are a lot of feelings of like confusion or feeling isolated if your sexual identity is different from your friends or what have you, or just from being heterosexual, but that is okay. There's nothing wrong with it. Like, so it's very normalizing, and I felt like excluding transgender people's experiences especially if, like, okay, so say you're transgender, which if they're not going to talk about gender identity, like, okay, fine, but can you talk about the people who are transgender who identify as straight or as a lesbian or as gay or bisexual? Like, transgender people also have sexual identity, and I felt like that could have also been addressed, because there's a whole other layer to it, and so I just feel like, and also it also didn't talk about like race impact on sexual identity. So I felt like that was also something where, like, you can focus on sexual identity, there's nothing wrong with that, but I feel like you're missing the multicultural aspect, or the intersectionality aspect. So yeah, I just felt like there was more that could have been done, but it's also like, all right, but are they just trying to make this like easy to ingest if someone is, you know, in the year 2000 trying to read it really quickly at the library? Like, so there's that. So I gave it 4 stars. I did think it was informative. I just felt like there were some things that were kind of missing a bit. So now I have to read one more book. I kind of want to read Game Changer, but I worry that it will take me too long. So I don't know, maybe I'll start Game Changer, and if by like 11 I haven't gotten close to finishing it, maybe I'll just pick up a different, like, short book. Like, I'm looking at my nonfiction shelf right now, and I have like 3 books that are like very tiny. So maybe that'll be my plan, but I will let you know. But I'm going to go and hopefully start reading again. Okay, so it's been a little bit. I did reach 115 books. I think that's the important thing to just say right off the bat. I don't want this year to feel the same. I don't want to have to do like a big push of short books at the end of the year to reach my reading goal. I did finish the year with a novel. I read Game Changer by Reid, which is following, it's a start of a series. I think there's 7 books so far. It's a start of a series where the NHL has hockey players, and there's more gay hockey players than, not you would think, but just than are out. There are a lot of closeted hockey players, and so the books are following them and how that feels. The first one, Game Changer, follows Scott, he has been playing for a few years now. I would say a decent amount of time, because I think in the book he's like 28, and so I think that means he'd been playing for like not a decade. I think he's been playing for like 4 or 5 years. At the start of the novel, he has not been playing well, and he is keeping up with his exercise. He goes for a run, and he stops in this like smoothie place afterwards, which is where he meets Kip, and there is sort of an instant attraction, and they continue to see one another as Scott is like maintaining his good luck charm, because the smoothie and Kip made him play well in the game that night. And so they end up getting closer and developing into a relationship, but Scott doesn't know about coming out. He doesn't think that he's ready. He thinks that the fallout will be too big because there's no other openly out player in the NHL in the book and in real life. And so that's the big conflict in the novel of like whether Scott will come out and will take that risk for Kip. So for the most part, I really liked it. I'm glad that I read it because I haven't heard like great things about the audiobook. And I think this might just be a series that I just read. But I did like it. I still like Heated Rivalry better because I read that a couple years ago. And I felt like the relationship was really nice. It was very cute. It made a lot of sense how it developed. My only issue was with some of Kip's like thought process, because very quickly he got frustrated with their relationship being a secret. And I'm not saying that's not fair, because it is, especially if he's been out since he was like 18, I think. And so he doesn't want to feel like he's like back in the closet. That is totally fair and totally understandable. But it just happened so quickly, that frustration built up. Because I think they'd only been together for like a month before Kip started like having some resentful thoughts or shutting down. I'm like, I'm sorry, a month is not long enough for that feeling to build up, especially when your partner travels for like a week at a time for their job. Like, I'm not denying that it's frustrating. I just don't think it's realistic that it would develop that quickly. So that was really my only issue. I just felt like Kip wasn't being fair sometimes. But again, I do understand that feeling. So yeah, so I, just because of that, because it bothered me sometimes, I like, there were a couple times where I rolled my eyes. I'm like, dude, like, you really? Other than that, I thought it was great. It was a really good time. And so I gave it 4.5 stars. And I'm looking forward to starting Heated Rivalry, rereading Heated Rivalry, but I don't know when I will be doing that. And then yesterday was surprisingly busy. And so I didn't have a ton of time to read, but I did start reading. I read the first chapter of The Right Thing to Do at the Time, which is following these two friends, and like, I think they're 27, I think the book says, but one of them like enters into a relationship, and so they have to navigate like how that changes their friendship. I think that's what it's about. I don't quite remember the summary, and I only read one chapter, and the one chapter is kind of written weird. I'm not a huge fan where like the narrator of the story breaks the fourth wall and like talks to the reader. Like, I really don't like that. I'm hoping that's not the whole book. It was in that first chapter, that's what happened, and I'm like, ooh, I don't know. So we will see. But yeah, that's what I read, and now I have to go to work, and on my way to work, I'm gonna start listening to The Count of Monte Cristo, which is gonna take me all month to listen to. So that's great. Okay, so this is like a little bit late, and then I didn't film all weekend. I really didn't do much. That's part of the reason. Like, on Saturday, I recorded a podcast episode with my dad, which took almost 4 hours because we had a lot of thoughts. But other than that, it was just like hanging out with Chris and reading more of The Right Thing to Do at the Time, just because I had to finish it by last night for the book club meeting that I was hosting. So I did finish it yesterday. Like, I finished it like 15 minutes before I had to leave. So something that I forgot, and maybe I haven't mentioned in this vlog yet, but I had forgotten that like in the synopsis online, and maybe on the actual book, but I didn't get a chance to look at it, it says that this novel is like if Pride and Prejudice met Shalom Aleichem, who is the Yiddish writer whose stories inspired Fiddler on the Roof. And I can see that. However, as someone who has read Shalom Aleichem and also deeply loves Pride and Prejudice, I felt like it didn't do either really well. Like, if that was the inspiration, it could have been done a lot better. Like I forgot previous times that I've talked about The Right Thing to Do at the Time, which now I'm wondering if I've talked about it at all. I actually don't think I have. Well, that's the tagline. it follows Ari, who is the main character. He's like 27. He's a trans man who still works in his like college job, even though he's not in college anymore. He still works in this like music library, shelving sources there. And he has a best friend named Itchy. They went to summer camp together, and they've been best friends since. And Itchy gets really like into this girl who's also like an actress. And there's also Ari's family who, because of like the Pride and Prejudice connection, like Ari is supposed to be Lizzie, which I disagree wholeheartedly with. Itchy is Jane, which like, okay. And then Ari's family, his dad, Mr. Wexler, is supposed to be Mrs. Bennet. Mrs. Wexler is supposed to be Mr. Bennet. And then his brother, Josh, is supposed to be Lydia. Now, his parents' portrayal as compared to the Bennets, I don't like. That was fine. That was accurate. However, that also meant that like it lent really hard into Jewish stereotypes, which I feel like was maybe not intentional, but that's how it felt. And so it felt just a little like. And then I don't agree with Josh's portrayal of Lydia at all, because Lydia is 15, and so she's very like immature and, you know, just very vain, and like that's fine. She's 15. Josh is like 25 or something, and so he just comes off as like this sociopath, to be quite honest. And then all of the story beats from Pride and Prejudice really didn't start until like 40% through, maybe. And so like that's why I forgot that it was supposed to be like kind of a Pride and Prejudice retelling, because that didn't really start until 40% through. And then it felt like so jam-packed in the second half of the book, where I was like, oh, you're really like putting all of the story beats of Pride and Prejudice in the second half of the book, which is insane. So even if I wasn't super familiar with Pride and Prejudice, like half of the people who went to the meeting last night were not, we all agreed the pacing was just really weird. Like the first half of the book was very existential dread, which like that's fine, but the existential dread didn't make any sense. Like there wasn't any context given for it. Like it's totally fine to have existential dread, that is totally fair, but like where is that coming from? So it didn't land with me. After our discussion last night, I kept finding more things that I'm like, yeah, I didn't like that, I didn't like that, I didn't like that. So yeah, I gave it 3 stars because like it was fine. It was fine. It just like, I do think if I wasn't so familiar with Pride and Prejudice, maybe it would have gotten a higher rating, although I still feel like the pacing was weird. The first-person narrator coming in at the beginning and the end just really threw me out of it. So, yeah. So there's that. And then I did listen to more over the weekend. I did listen to more of Count of Monte Cristo. And while it is a very large book, so it feels slow, it's really not. Like, it's actually very action-packed. So the only thing I don't like is that, like, Count of Monte Cristo is about this guy, Edmund, who is falsely accused of a crime and goes to jail for it because he was essentially set up by these 3 other people. Well, 2 other people, and then that is continued by the 3rd person. And so he spends time in jail, quite a long time. And then when he gets out, he goes about enacting revenge. So that's the story summed up. Where I am right now, he is in jail and has been for quite some time. And he continues trying to plead his case that he's innocent. And people, like, people believe him when they're talking. Like the main example I can think of right now is like the inspector came to talk to the prisoners about like their well-being and stuff, and he makes his case to the inspector, and the inspector says that he'll look into it. But then there's like a note written on like the registry or something that he's like dangerous and not to be listened to, and then the inspector's like, okay, even though like he had listened to Edmund and like heard his story, but he was just like, nah, he's lying. I'm like, look into it more. I feel so bad, even though I know he's gonna get out. So yeah, so I am enjoying the Count of Monte Cristo, and yeah, that's about where we're at. So this week had a lot of reading and then not a lot of reading, mainly just because of like that final push to meet my reading goal. But I hope you enjoyed it anyway. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to leave a comment, or like the video, subscribe, or click the notification bell, and I will talk to you in the next video. Bye.